And if you're actually going to compare economic policies and public policies between the 45th president and the 46th president, it's without question they were better under the 45th.
Well, look, I mean,
so if you're going to examine today, hold on, but Abby, if you're going to examine today in America and where we're going as Americans, then you have to have the right set of economic policies.
I'm going to interrupt you on the facts, Congressman. The Black unemployment rate was the lowest in American history under Joe Biden just last year. The poverty rate for Black people is the lowest under Joe Biden.
Oh, that's gotta hurt!
As you've likely noticed, Florida Republican Byron Donalds has made headlines for the most Republican of reasons.
One thing I really want to just get you to address is there were a lot of people who heard what you had to say, and a lot of them are offended by the idea that you would repeat Jim Crow 3 times in your comments as if to suggest that that was a time period because that Black families were, in your words, together, because in your words, Black people were not just more conservative, they voted more conservatively. That's a good thing. I mean, it sounds like nostalgia. Do you regret using that time frame as a reference?
When not in costume doing Donald Trump's bidding outside the courthouse, the representative is often, with confidence I should add, spewing complete and utter inaccuracies. None more so than during an interview with CNN's Abby Phillip, and they just so happened to touch on a subject matter that you all know by now grinds my gears. This absurd portrayal of Trump as some economic messiah, to which I debunked step by step in a recent video which many of you have watched, so thank you for that. Trump's tax cuts never delivered the promised growth, his budget deficits surged and then stayed relatively high under Biden. His tariffs and trade deals never brought back all the lost factory jobs he claimed they would. But here it was Abby Phillip who was not willing to allow this misinformation to be spread freely.
And if you're actually going to compare economic policies and public policies between the 45th president and the 46th president, it's without question they were better under the 45th.
Well, look, I mean,
so if you're going to examine today, hold on, but Abby, if you're going to examine today in America and where we're going as Americans, then you have to have the right set of economic policies and the right set of public policies. I mean, Abby, you've been interrupting me the entire interview. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
I'm going to interrupt you on the facts, Congressman. The Black unemployment rate was the lowest in American history under Joe Biden just last year. The poverty rate for Black people is the lowest under Joe Biden. So,
what I said is very clear.
I asked you to explain because I wanted to, what I want to undo is understand what you're saying here. Because if you're making a comparison, you're saying the Black family was together then, they're not together now. And you're using that to try to say that things are bad now. Well, first of all, let me just to set the table here, by pretty much every available measure, Black families, Black individuals in this country are better off today than they were during Jim Crow. Would you agree with that?
Abby, of course I would. I'm not making that point, and this is the problem. What the Democrats, what Hakeem Jeffries did on the House floor, what Jamie Harrison, what the president of the NAACP, what the Biden campaign, because they're the ones who started this. It was really the Biden campaigns who were trying to cherry pick everything. They're trying to twist my words into saying something. I never said that. What I was talking about was specifically Black families. And the point that Black families being together is a great thing for the Black community. And you do have to acknowledge the empirical fact that before Lyndon Johnson's policies and the welfare state that was created in the United States, I'm not talking about good, bad, or indifferent.
But what about
Black families were, Black marriage rates were significantly higher.
Well, what about
They're
other
rising
things that
again
might
in
have,
America. That's a good thing. We should celebrate that.
What about other things that may have contributed to the, maybe the decline in marriage rates, which, by the way, is not unique to Black families. That's happening actually across racial groups. But what about other things? I mean, what about redlining? Do you think that had an effect on the Black family? What about mass incarceration? What about the war on drugs, which was pushed by a Republican president whose advisor said it was specifically to target Black people? What about all of those things?
It is completely inaccurate to say that black people were better off economically under Trump than Biden. I mean, you can't dispute it. I mean, to say that any group outside of the top 1% who made billions thanks to Donald Trump's tax cuts that added trillions to the national debt were better off is a blatant lie.
I mean, the truth of the matter is actually Trump hasn't gotten a lot. He's torn some stuff down. There's no law that he's passed that is transformative in this country. He passed a tax cut to give away some more money to rich folks, which Republicans have been doing that for years. But you can't name a piece of legislation that he's done that has actually changed the country, even for his own constituencies. So it's always easier to tear down than build up.
And Republicans, the thing is, they know this. They know that the numbers are out there, but the messaging around the Biden economy has been somewhat successfully hijacked. The result of a catastrophic media failure, unless we do something about it. They are often allowed the oxygen to spread these lies freely. When the truth is, as I've said time and time again, understanding that a huge swath of Americans gauge how the economy is performing through things like inflation and gas prices. I know, don't get me started on the whole global versus national issue.
So I met a man tonight who is en route from New Hampshire to Arizona, and he said that every time he stops for gas, he sees one of these stickers. Different variations, all with the same theme. This one has former President Trump pointing to the price with the caption, "Biden did that."
I take off five or six a day from our different pumps. I got one here, is the "I did that," and then they put it by the pump, and it's supposed to be, I guess, that President Biden is causing the gas to go up.
The little stickers on gas pumps all across the country illustrate the American people know exactly whose fault this is.
If you have pumped gas in the past year, you may have seen one of these stickers blaming President Biden for the cost of gas at the pump. Republicans have done an incredibly good job of convincing Americans that the surge in gas prices that followed the start of the war in Ukraine was somehow Joe Biden's fault, despite the fact that Biden granted more oil and gas drilling permits than Trump did in the first 2 years of his presidency. And the fact that Biden released more oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve than has ever been released before.
But aside from that, the fact that since the Inflation Reduction Act has passed, inflation has come down drastically. But still, Trump and his messengers, they know that this is how the American public perceive the economy. So what do? They tout his gas prices that were lowest during COVID when nobody was driving.
I got gas way down to $1.87 a gallon.
And his inflation numbers during COVID.
Contrast between the Trump administration's amazing success and Joe Biden's breathtaking failure. There's never been anything. Nobody's ever seen anything like this.
But then they blatantly refuse to take any responsibility for the record high unemployment and colossal loss of jobs. Can people not understand this? They literally want to pick and choose the best parts of COVID and ignore any responsibility for the rest. When the reality is, Trump inherited a soaring economy, woefully mismanaged the pandemic, and therefore gifted Biden a train wreck.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. Asked me to speak a little bit about the job numbers, and the job numbers just came out, and they're horrible. And and I say that not happily, I say that very unhappily. But the numbers are horrible. It's just these people are destroying our country. Here's another sign of it.
83,500 total jobs left Wisconsin during my predecessor's term. That's not on my watch. We're determined to turn it around. Thus far, since we've come to office, we've created, and with the governor's overwhelming leadership, we've created over 178,000 jobs in Wisconsin. We're going to create more here in Racine, and big time.
If you had told me that the unemployment rate after COVID was going to be back down to 4% or lower.
Yeah. Lowest in 50 years, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if you had told me that 15 million jobs would have been created, that wages are higher now than they were pre-pandemic.
Yeah. And the most jobs created in history, correct?
In this 4-year period, yeah.
And what the Biden administration have performed is nothing short of a miracle. They have resuscitated this economy from job numbers to wages. And yes, as Phillip pointed out, record unemployment for Black and Hispanic Americans.
I'm just trying to have a conversation.
I'm going to interrupt you on the facts, Congressman. The Black unemployment rate was the lowest in American history under Joe Biden just last year. The poverty rate for Black people is the lowest under Joe Biden.
These are not debatable. They're facts. I sound like a broken record, but you know what? If a broken record stands in the way of us losing the tenet of our democracy, I'll keep doing it.
Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow. That's an outlandish, outrageous, and out-of-pocket observation. We were not better off when a young boy named Emmett Till could be brutally murdered without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when black women could be sexually assaulted without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be systematically lynched without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when children could be denied a high quality education without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be denied the right to vote without consequence because of Jim Crow. How dare you make such an ignorant observation? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.